Hey, Crash back here. So things are quickly developing between PennWeb and Crash as Abby has joined into the stall the mall stuff and is finding out Mom gets my stuff. It doesn't get my stuff the second time around. And Crash has broken the touchdown mark, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm so awesome." Has Mike read the newspaper article to himself. So we've still got this level of separation where Crash wants to be above everybody else and have nicer clothes and nicer things, and his parents work a ton of hours to make that happen. And you got Abby over here in Penn Webb and Jane Forbes trying to stall them all and get muddy and dirty, and let's see where that continues to go. We still have Scooter in the house. He's living with him now, so let's see what happens. November 28th. Scooter cooked Thanksgiving dinner. Scooter always cooks Thanksgiving dinner. One year he came all the way from San Francisco to do it. Of course, the best part is that now, instead of going back to San Francisco or Cape May or wherever afterwards, all he has to do is go upstairs to his room. I remember when my sister and I were little. Memory moment. He would tell us that the store ran out of turkeys, so that we were having that year was Thanksgiving buzzard. Abby believed him, and she would bawl and bawl until he told her the truth. This year, he told her it was a fake turkey made out of soybeans. She didn't believe him, and she didn't eat it. Tell you the truth, Scooter makes so many good things you could throw out the turkey and not even miss it. Candied sweet potatoes, creamed onions, cranberry nut salad, corn pudding, gravy, cheese bread, and not one but two kinds of stuffing. One is the regular kind that goes in the bird. The other is oyster stuffing. It's about the best thing there ever was. Abby and I are the only ones who eat it. Now, memory moment was to let you know that Scooter used to tell her stories about fake dinner dishes. And the reason it's important now is Abby is vegetarian. So Scooter tried to fool her. It didn't work. She's a little older, a little wiser. But is there anything else on the table that could cause this to be a problem for a vegetarian? We each gobble up what's on our plates and go for seconds and thirds till it's gone. Only then do we start in on the rest of the food. But this year I figured it would be different. When I saw the great crusader and vegetarian digging in, I said, "You're eating meat." She stared at her plate. "Oysters aren't meat." "They're not vegetables," I said, "and they're not fruit." Her fork hand flopped on the table. There was pain in her expression. She was staring at the biggest sacrifice of all. Then she suddenly brightened up. "Ha!" She went and stabbed a forkful of oyster stuffing. Oysters don't have faces. We usually have relatives over for the day. This year, it was Uncle Herm, Aunt Sandy, and Bridget. Memory moment. Remember her from the beginning? Crashed into her with his helmet. They didn't come in the house. This was a long time ago. They're back. So let's see how that plays out. As soon as they came in, Uncle Herm was all over Abby and me. "Hey, there they are." He starts clapping. Bridget looks around for a hole to crawl in. "Mr. Touchdown and Miss Mall." He lays a fingertip on each of us. "Am I allowed to touch you?" "You'll just be getting bad luck touching me," said Abby. By that, she meant the mall is going ahead. Bulldozers went in the next day, and now the place looks like a farmer's field ready for planting. Uncle Herm patted her head. "Hey, no big deal. Who cares anyway? The point is you were on television. You'll probably be getting calls from the talk shows any day now." I guess nobody was surprised during dinner when he brought up a certain Christmas years ago. He wagged a drumstick. "I'll tell you what, I knew that boy was going to be a fullback someday the way he charged into Bridget." Bridget groaned. "Dad." "Bridget's in 7th grade now, just like me." He pointed the drumstick at me. "Just to remind you, I'm the one that named you Crash. You remember that when you get interviewed on Monday Night Football." "Right, Uncle Herm," I said. I looked across the table at Bridget. She was just another 7th grade girl. I can't remember or even picture slamming into her with my helmet. She looked back at me. She didn't start bawling. She didn't flinch. All she did was stick a forkful of white meat in her mouth and chew. What I'm saying is, except for Uncle Herm always telling this story of how I got my name, it's like it never happened. But it did. And then, in a way, it did again. Chapter 29. That was kind of mysterious phrase there. Now we know when he was in 1st grade, Webb's dad also said, "Wow, we know why you're called Crash, because he's just a wrecking ball of saying whatever he wants and doing what he wants." So let's see how that plays into chapter 29. Dinner was over. Uncle Herm wanted to play football. It was a nice day, so we went out in the backyard. Something new was in the corner of the yard. A pile of wood. My father looked at me. "What's that?" "Don't ask me," I said. It wasn't the kind of wood for making an observation or post in a tree, which Abby had been pestering me about. There were split logs and sticks and just a jumbled mess. My father zeroed in on Abby. Does this have something to do with your cockamamie idea to turn my yard into a jungle? It's not a jungle, Abby snapped. It's a wildlife habitat. And it's not just your yard, it's my yard too. I live here. My father snapped back. That's exactly right. And that's why I work 70 hours a week to make a good home for you. You, not vermin, which is what that, and he pointed at the woodpile, will attract. What's vermin, said Abby. Rats. It won't attract rats, she snapped. It's for mice. Mice are like little rats. He flipped his thumb over his shoulder. The wood goes. Abby boiled like a forgotten pot on the stove. Sides for the game were me, Dad, and Bridget against Scooter, Abby, and Uncle Herm. We just played two-hand tag, and with the girls and all, it wasn't much of a game. I kept scoring without even trying. Since the game was tag, I used my speed instead of power. Mostly my father played quarterback while Bridget and I went out for passes. On the other team, Uncle Herm did most of the passing. Abby and Scooter were receivers. Whenever Scooter got the ball, I tried to picture him as a speedy little kid in the streets, but I couldn't do it. Then they ran a trick play where Uncle Herm passed to Abby, and Abby, just before she got tagged, lateraled the ball to Scooter. It fooled me long enough to give Scooter a head start. I lit out after him. Scooter carried the ball high in his armpit, and he was ripping. Suddenly he was that little kid tearing down a back alley with some housewife, hanging out wash and shouting, "Look at him scoot." Only it was really Abby behind me yelling, "Go, Scooter, go!" And the goal line, marked by a weed whacker, was coming up fast. And I reached out, but I couldn't touch him, so I dove and I flew through the air and I tackled him at the knees and brought him down. He felt like sticks, just inches from the weed whacker. The ball popped loose. It was wobbling in the end zone. I pounced on it, jumped up, saw I wasn't covered, and took off. Ran that baby coast to coast. Abby screaming, but nobody laying a finger on me. I spiked the ball in the end zone and did my touchdown dance, which I was never allowed to do in school. Abby was at the other end, kneeling over Scooter, who was sitting on the grass with his legs flat out, like the sides of a triangle. My father was stomping toward me, growling in my face, the clenched teeth kind of growl he uses when he's outside and doesn't want the neighbors to hear. "What do you think you're doing? What do you think you're doing?" I just started walking to the other end. Abby was on one side of Scooter, Uncle Herm on the other. They hoisted him to his feet. Bridget reached in and pulled a blade of grass from his forehead. His cheekbone was red, like that Dawn clown from the dance had smacked him with her makeup. Abby was screeching something at me, but Scooter only looking. He undraped his arms from the others, and he gave me a little nod and a smile, and then another voice came yelling. A voice I didn't recognize. "No, no, I said never again." So Crash had said, and then I got my name again. Perhaps that was the moment. He crashed into his grandfather. He's an older guy. Really the right way to play football in the backyard? Everyone turned. It was my mother, at the back door. The reason she sounded different was because she was pinching her nose. Her other hand was has a hold of my football laundry bag, as far out in front of her as her arm could reach. Guess I kind of forgot to empty out the bag. I couldn't remember where I'd left it, but obviously my mother had stumbled across it. You could almost see the stink fumes rising out of it. Let me go back here because I'm pretty sure his last game was November 20th. This is November 28th. 8 days in that bag. I was going to take it, but my mother had other ideas. She let go of her nose, held her breath, and turned the bag upside down. Stuff came falling onto the back steps. Socks, shirts, underwear, towels, candy wrappers, pizza crusts, Cheerios, mouse. "Mouse!" Abby shrieked. "Mouse!" It was a mouse, all right. It landed on a sock and scampered over a shirt, down the steps, and onto the grass. I ran the opposite way. Abby went after it. "Here, Mousie, here, Mousie." At first I thought she was trying to catch it. Then I realized she was herding it toward the wood pile. I couldn't see it in the grass. It looked like my sister was chasing a ghost. Finally, she stopped in front of the pile. "I think he's in there," she whispered. She patted the pile. "Make yourself at home, Mousie." "The wood goes," my father said. Abby planted herself in front of the pile and folded her arms. That wood was going over her dead body. So in this book, sometimes the author just do these dots here, let you know more time has passed in the day. I was shaky the rest of the day. As I was picking up from the back steps, I noticed a clump of stuff. Pieces of paper, cloth, thread, dust balls, Kleenex, all wadded up. The mouse's nest. This rodent had been living in my laundry bag probably since the football season started. It had been stealing Cheerios. I remember back. It was in the kitchen. He jumped on the table, remember that? And then the mouse disappeared in the other room. Couldn't find it. Mom came home later and was like, that football bag cannot be here. Take it upstairs. See, that piece of the story ties in later to right now. That mouse had climbed in that bag on that day at the beginning of the football season. Chilling in there ever since. I had carried that bag back and forth to school every day. I thought about the times I stuck my hand in to pull something out. For 2 months, I was inches from a rodent. I carried a rodent around. We ate the same cereal. We slept in the same room. I heard something outside, and I looked out my window. Abby was slamming sticks into the wheelbarrow. The pile was shrinking. My father had won. That night, when the mouse thing started to wear off, my mind went back to the football game, to Scooter, to the tackle. Why did I do it? I was just being me, that's all, the crash man. I mean, it's true, I was a little mad at Scooter all week. It was his fault that he pressed the wrong button on the camcorder and none of the film turned out. So there was no movie of the day I broke the single-season scoring record. Okay, so I was a little upset about it. Who wouldn't be? But that's not why I tackled him. That night I heard him telling stories and Abby laughing in his room. They called for me. I said I was busy. Real late after midnight, I got out of bed and went down the hallway. The house was silent. All the bedroom doors were closed. As quiet as I could, I turned his doorknob, pushed open the door. The edge of the hallway light rolled up the bedspread like some little sunrise. When I got to the head of the bed, I almost croaked. It wasn't him. It was my sister. I closed the door and went back down the hall. It felt like pictures on the wall were looking at me. I opened my sister's door, and there he was. Abby must have fallen asleep in his bed, so he just switched rooms with her. I stood at the doorway looking. He was sleeping on his back, and he wore a tank top undershirt. He was old. I had never seen it before, not in the kitchen, not at the football games, not when he took us places, but now, sleeping in the bed of my 10-year-old sister on Sylvester sheets and Tweety pillowcase, he was about as old as anybody had ever seen. I didn't like it. I closed the door and went back to bed. I hadn't used my nightlight for a long time, but I turned it on. I had a hard time getting to sleep. I wanted them back in their right rooms. The next day, when I checked the backyard, the wood pile was gone. Where it used to be now was Abby's old dollhouse. Chapter 31, December 19th. Scooter is in the hospital. That's it. That's the entire chapter. That's not good. Why would Crash have been mad at his grandpa? He said it wasn't because he messed up the film. He talking to the Webbs? Is there something else he did that we don't know about? I mean, that's the only other thing I could think of. He was mad at the Webbs for talking to him. Let's see. December 23rd. It happened last Saturday. When I woke up that morning, I heard a hammer going outside, but it sounded pretty close, so I leaned over to my window and pushed the curtain aside and looked out. Scooter was in the cherry tree, hammering nails into boards. Figured he was making that observation post Abby had been pestering me about. I lay back down and I went to sleep. When I opened my eyes again, I had this funny feeling like I didn't just wake up regular, but something had made me wake up. I looked at my door. It was shut, nobody in my room. Everything was quiet. Quiet? No hammering. I jumped to the window. He was sitting on the ground, his back up against the tree trunk, and the first thing I thought was, great, he's okay. But questions blew away the relief, like, why was he sitting there? Why did he leave that board dangling from one nail above his head? Why was the hammer 5 feet away in the grass? Why wasn't he moving? Downstairs, Abby screamed, and I heard the back door open. I saw her race across the brown grass, stood there at the window as she raced back to the house. As the ambulance came, and the men in white pants and the stretcher with gray straps and the flashing red lights and the siren that sounded like a zoo going further and further away, I just sat there. It was a stroke. That's what they told my parents. My sister and I aren't allowed to see him yet. A stroke is when an artery in the brain breaks and blood pours out, my dad says. They don't know how long he's going to be in the hospital. They don't know how messed up he'll be. They don't even know if he's going to live. They don't know anything. Like every year, the Christmas tree stands in a corner of the living room. And like every year, all it has on it are white lights and teddy bears. You believe it? When you have a home of your own, you can decorate your tree any way you want, my mother says every year. I got news for her. I'm going to be out of here a lot quicker than she thinks. 1 minute after I graduate from high school, I'll be in my own apartment. Me and Mike. And the lights on our tree are going to be all different colors. There'll be all kinds of balls and tons of tinsel. You'll think the tree was silver. And on top of the tinsel, popcorn, strings of it, ropes of it, wrapping around the tree like a mummy. There's lights strung across the street downtown, and Santa Claus is hanging from the lampposts. At the mall, they keep playing the same songs over and over. If I hear chestnuts roasting on the open fire one more time, I'm going to do a Christmas barf. The stores in the mall have fake snow in the windows, like I'm supposed to believe it snowed through the roof, right? The Webbs came over one night, all three of them, with food. Like what? We can't feed ourselves? You notice Crash's attitude towards everything since his grandfather's hospitalization? Like he wasn't a fan of the world before, now he just really hates it. My mother invited them in and told them to sit down. She acted like the food was a big deal. She gave them cookies, Christmas cookies that Scooter had made, including chocolate macaroons that he had made just for me. For once, the happy little surprise was not his usual cheery, perky self. He sat on the sofa between his grandparent-looking parents. I didn't talk to him except to grunt at some of his dumb questions. Mostly I glared while he ate my chocolate macaroons. I entertained myself by trying to picture what he might get for Christmas. Maybe a nice shirt from Second Time Around with 2 holes in it, and a nice string bean from Aunt Mabel, and an oat burger from Uncle Harvey, and a nice ban all malls and wars decal to paste across his forehead. I didn't touch a crumb of the food they brought over. Christmas is the day after tomorrow. I woke up thinking, you didn't buy him a present. That means you don't expect him to live. Then the same thought rolled over and showed me what was beneath it. Every minute that you don't get him a present, he's a minute closer to dying. You're killing him. Crash is kind of going crazy right now. It seems a little bit like this is really when things happen to you, sometimes your mental health deteriorates, and he's struggling right now, and his thoughts aren't clear, and he's making stuff up in his head like if you don't buy a present, then your grandpa's gonna die. So he's sounding crazy, but really he probably just needs somebody to talk to. I threw on my clothes, no socks, no jacket, nothing flat. I was out the door. I hopped on my bike and tore up the street. I pedaled for blocks. I burst into the first store-looking place I came to. There was a lady behind a computer. It didn't look like a store on the inside, and I gasped, "You got presents? Christmas presents?" She looked at me funny. "I don't think so. This is a law office?" 2 seconds later, I was in the next place. This one was a store. I didn't have time to shop around. It doesn't matter what you buy, just buy it. I grabbed the nearest thing off the counter. It was a pair of bright red high-heeled shoes with glitter all over and a red bow in front. "How much?" I said. The lady behind the counter just stared. I shoved the shoes in her face and I yelled, "How much?" She blinked. $6? I pulled out my 10 and I slammed it down. She took it. She pressed the buttons on an old wooden cash register. The register pinged and a sign saying $10 shot up. I took my first breath of the morning. I took the bag from the lady. I closed my eyes and I swear I saw or felt right at that moment something dark and ugly and bottomless back away from a certain hospital door in Springfield. When nobody is in the house, I go to his room sometimes and I just sit on the bed. So again, Crash is clearly having some emotional feelings coming out, and he's not talking to anybody about them. So one good lesson from this is if you're struggling with something, make sure you talk to somebody. If you get those thoughts, you're like, wow, this is kind of crazy thinking. Talk to somebody about it because it can help. Chapter 33, December 29th. They moved him to a regular hospital room. Some doctor said he's going to be okay. The more I hear, the more it sounds like okay means not dead. My mom says he has to learn to walk again. She says he doesn't talk too good, and he doesn't remember stuff. I stopped asking her what else is wrong. I don't want to know. Christmas stunk. We did all the usual things, but it was like, I don't know, pizza without pepperoni. For the first time in my life, I had to be woken up on Christmas morning. As usual, my parents had Christmas tapes playing when he came downstairs. For a minute there, I thought it was the mall. The songs are always the same singers, like a couple of prehistoric baboons named Perry Como and Bing Crosby. Perry? Bing? Do you believe the names people had in the old days? Our piles were bigger than ever. I got a Dan Marino football. I got my own DVD player and 2 DVDs to add to my collection, Swamp Thing and Sports Bloopers. I got a game for my Nintendo and LA Raiders stuff, jacket, wristband, cap, and a bunch of other clothes. It was weird. All day long there were times when I forgot when it seemed regular, but it never lasted. It was like there was this grinning, twisted little demon following me around. Whenever I started to feel good, it would go, "Aha, you're forgetting," and would whack me with a 2x4. Every year, there's the same fight. Abby and I want to take our piles up to our rooms and start using them. My parents want them to stay under the world's most boring Christmas tree until New Year's so people who come to visit can see them, except nobody hardly ever visits. This year, we didn't take anything. We said, okay, you got 3 days. If nobody comes, the stuff goes up, and that's what happened. Now the only stuff under the tree is Scooter's. My mom says we'll keep everything just so until he gets home. The bad part about that is the tree is fake, so it will last forever. Come on, Scooter. Come home soon. After the red shoes, I did actually get him a real present, a book about ships of the U.S. Navy. I'm not sure what to do with the shoes. I wrapped them up. Then I was going to throw them away, but then I thought, wait, maybe they're a good luck charm. Who knows what bad could happen if you dump them? So they're under my bed. The next chapter is chapter 34. It is January 1st. It is a new year. This is kind of a downer moment in Crash's life, and he's feeling depression. I mean, he's even sleeping in longer than he normally does on Christmas, nonetheless. So he's definitely feeling emotional effects of his grandfather going down, and he had even been kind of weirded out before that when he tackled him and noticed how old he was. Like, he's starting to have these realizations that his grandfather is probably nearing the end, and he loves his grandfather a lot. And with this stroke, it just compounds things and makes it worse. So we'll see how he ends up handling that. Which friends or which people come into his life that he might be able to communicate with and help him out. So tune in next week for the final chapters of this book. We're almost done. We've got about 15 chapters left, so 3 days next week we'll have it done. All right.